Okay, today is April 26th, 2015, and we are talking to my mother, Dorothy Swazee, who was born on October 20th, 2000, 2000, let's try 1915. So my mom will be turning 100 this year, and I thought it might be fun to just kind of talk about some of her experiences in life. So, the first topic that we're going to talk about is first I'll give a little background that my mother was born in Stevens Point, Wisconsin and lived there through her youth. And so we're going to start out by talking about what it was like to live there in their house in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. And the first person we're going to talk about is the oldest person that was in the house, and that would be her grandmother, who was born in New York, came to Illinois as a child, and then into the Wisconsin Territory as a child in the 1840s. So my mom's going to tell you what it was like to be around her grandmother. So here we go.
Well, I think the first thing to talk about is my grandmother, um, the person that you would like to hear, as she was a very small person, and she was always very tidy and well dressed. And she had a room up the stairs, and right at the end of the stairs to the left was a large room. And this was a time when she always could remember, or I could remember, that she was lived in our home. And she had her own nice big room and a big shelf or closet. And she loved history. And any event that was in the papers, she'd cut those out and keep them filed in the back of this kitchen, this closet. And she loved to tell about the DAR, and she was a member, and she was so proud of the DAR. And even very small, she'd say, you must become a DAR member. And I never had a clue what she was talking about, and didn't realize what I missed, because it was a great thing. And she was very intelligent. She wrote, she read a lot of, as much as she could, a kind of books that she could get a hold of. And this I like, because she used to sleep, or she should stay at bed at night to read, and with a trying to keep a micro, well, not a magnifying glass, because her eyes were, as she got older, was very hard for her to read, but she always read anyway.
She read with a magnifying glass.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And then, I loved to watch her read. So at night I'd crawl in next to her and watch her reading, and thought how interesting this is. And I'd see her, and she'd just be so intent. And then I'd look at her body, and was, kind of get, sort of get off her shoulders and arms a little bit, and I'd think, oh, she's so wrinkled. I remember this wrinkling, and I just think, now I look at myself and I look the same way. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
Now, is she the one that had the long? You said she had long brown, like chestnut hair.
yes.
Even when she was older.
Yes. Yes.
So
I don't
does she-
believe she cut.
You don't think she ever went gray?
No, I don't think.
Wow.
No. Um,
But she was a small woman.
yes.
Wow. Okay.
Uh, so I have a picture sometime of the whole family, and it's really typical of what each person was like. I remember my dad, when he would come from the office back and forth, he'd have this straw hat, a little brim hat, and people nowadays really did care how they dressed, and they always look so nice.
Oh, so let me correct it. You think people now don't care how they dress, but back then people went out of their way to dress nice.
They very,
Yeah.
yes, typical, looking nice, with
Mm-hmm.
straw hats and so on. Well, getting back to my memories, we had no heating in our cars, in our homes, except two great big coal burners, and that would be we were right in the center of a place that it's like a hall, a small hall that would hold this big stove. And then we had another stove upstairs, same kind of big stove, and that was held in a big round hall. And from the rooms that went out of this hall went into several bedrooms. And I can tell you one thing, I'll never forget, that we can have this warm space upstairs, but to undress and dress, but then the rooms were so cold that we could hardly bear it if it weren't for the feather beds. And my mother occasionally would take hot brick and wrap it with flannel and put it at the feet to keep our beds warmed up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I said my favorite saying is, I live to a home of my own. I am never going to be cold again. I remember that cold was terrible.
Okay, so did your grandmother also have a little stove in her room?
I was getting to the fact
Oh, okay.
that she was always well cared for, and my parents were so good to her. And this stove was a nice little round pot.
Pot-belly stove?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh. And who did you think took care of that? All that wood.
I think it might have been you.
Yes. That was my job. And I loved it. I loved anything like that.
So you'd haul the wood upstairs for your grandmother's pot-belly stove.
I always carried I did. Not just, my dad would haul up a arm of you know, chipped off wood, you know, small enough for her to handle that. And her room was always nice and cozy.
Well, so maybe that's why you were in there hanging out with her.
Well, we enjoyed things about her stories and things that nobody else would know about. And one that I loved her to tell about, but she'd say, now you know those poor Indians that had to be, they put around us in a reservation and then they let you go loose. There was nothing for them to do. But they used to come by our house and they'd look to see what, in the windows to see what it was like. And they never bothered us. They just looked around and just was observing all the time about the Indians. And I thought, oh, when I grow up, I'm going to learn a lot about Indians. And I still do. And I respect them greatly. And then, let's see, what any of the things, well...
Okay, so I want to just interject. So, Mom, you're talking about the homestead that they had down in southern Wisconsin near where the Horkin Marsh and those areas. I know this for a fact, so I'm in.
They did?
Yeah, that's where their farm was. Fond du Lac, Horkin Marsh. There's a place called Minnesota Junction. That's the area where that family was. So yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Now your grandmother, was the only did she have any brothers and sisters that were still alive at that time that you can remember?
I think there was a farmer, was that John, a member of the family?
Mm-hmm.
I think that must have been her brother.
Okay. Okay.
And he had a farm, and ever
often, yeah.
My grandmother had a daughter, Agnes, and they occasionally they would maybe come there on the train and go to Fond du Lac and stay there for a couple of weeks.
Okay. So your grandmother had a daughter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's Agnes.
Yeah, okay, so that would be Leslie David Richards' sister.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And so they would go on the train to see Agnes in Fond du Lac, and then maybe be able to see her brother also at the same time.
Well, he liked to come in from the farm to Agnes' home.
Yeah.
And John would just come loaded with all kinds of vegetables. And we just loved all of the things that he
would bring in.
Raise and bring in a big wagon.
So you would go on some of these trips down to Fond du Lac.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And Agnes was married to Worthing, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Did you want to know anything?
Well, we can just kind of wander in and out of your grandmother from now on. Let's talk a little bit about your dad, since we're kind of.
Well, his son was Mary Stevens. That was my
grandmother. Yeah, that was living with you.
Yes.
And married name Richards.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I never realized in all these years what a great and a wonderful man my father was. He made furniture that, nobody, thought that was unusual. And, now I look back, he did some wonderful things. And he was very wise, and we was educated. I don't know exactly what kind of training that they had, but I think if he had to any kind of like a university that taught with offices abilities and things like that. That's how he left or happened to be in the railroad office, and he must have been very, very talented as far as writing. That he had to be very careful that all the cars on the railroad were going to come in the right direction without having a collision.
Okay, so let's talk about this just for a second. He grew up in Fond du Lac. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah, because we have pictures of him being on various sports teams in Fond du Lac.
That's true.
We also have a picture of him with a bicycle in Fond du Lac.
Yes.
Yeah. So the assumption, we are assuming that he grew up in Fond du Lac, and that as he got hired by the railroad, and we don't know for sure, but we think that he went to work at the railroad as a result of his father having also worked on the railroad. So we think that's how they were in Fond du Lac to start with, and as a result of his employment, he actually ended up in Stevens Point working for at the time, was it called the Sioux Line, or was it the Wisconsin Central?
No,
back
that's
then?
the Sioux Line.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And that Sioux Line office is still there, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, the very building that he worked in is, in fact, still there on basically the west side of Business 51 as you drive through Stevens Point and get ready to go under the railroad bridge. That's where that office is. Because you and I went up there one day and we looked at it. And you said, oh, yeah, that's where my dad used to work.
Yes.
Yeah, so...
That's amazing.
Yeah. So... He was a big athletic guy, and he ended up working for the railroad. So that's what we know. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to butt into your interview.
I think that's important what you said, because my dad was so athletic, and he wanted to. So many things I wanted to tell you. There were always young children in our neighborhood, and my father was really the indicator of the one that gets kids together and play games, and we didn't have that big of a yard. That was what is amazing. But they would, they'd always have to be a competitor, because they had to race, do racing or whatever. And so I guess maybe my dad had a lot to do with the games that the children around here. And it was on our corner. And they would do kick the can and 7 steps around, and all the things I'm not sure that he did all of these games, but he certainly did a lot with children.
Mm-hmm.
And the one I like to tell you probably the most about. I can see my dad coming home, coming from the office in his straw hat, and then when I was really little, I know he used to pick his arms up when we came running along, when it was time to come at 5 o'clock, and all the kids were gathered in the corner and said, "Oh, Mr. Richards, will you please take us swimming?" Oh, my dad had what we call a
Model
tin-
T.
Model T.
Yeah.
Yes, but my dad called her Tizzy Liz. And so, we could put down the top of our car.
Now, was it Tizzy Liz or Tin Lizzie?
A Tin Lizzie.
Tin Lizzie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. And so all the things about this car was amazing too, because everything could be just like a convertible. Everything would fold down so that this car was completely open, and so that would be able to get so many kids in
Yep.
the car.
Yep. Yep.
And so we had old rough road to get to our swimming pool, and
now-
I say river.
Yeah, you used to go swim on the Plover River, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it
yeah.
was.
Yeah.
And so, that was a favorite thing. And so when we'd get up the top of the hill, we couldn't get you because it was too many people. So we all jumped out, and then we pushed the car and got it over this hill, and then we'd hop back in again.
Yeah, this is the hill down there on what was now Highway 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Mom, sit forward a little bit. I want to try to. You got a little bit of a glare still on your
All right.
glasses, so.
Do you want me to take my glasses off?
No, just sit forward a little bit more.
Okay.
Can you scoot forward? There you go. Let's do that.
Like that?
Yeah, because I'm trying to get the glare off your glasses. Because these are good stories and we don't want to lose them. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. You're much better on the glare now.
Okay. Now, what are we going to do?
You know what? Hold on a second. I'm gonna stop you.